Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Saints in Society. My name is Brad, and then Rick will be here with us in a second. And then we have a special guest today, Keith Balderston. Keith has a ton of experience in the medical field with maternal and fetal health and medicine, and so we'll get more into that later. And that's super relevant for the topic we have today, which is abortion. We're going to be talking about how Christians should think about abortion, what the act of abortion actually is, how do we define those terms, and then how do we engage with a society that just has a lot of heightened emotions around this topic right now. And so I'm really excited for our conversation. I think you'll find it beneficial to you. And so let's jump in.
This is Saints in Society, a podcast with an aim and focus on equipping saints to live in and engage with their society. With help from experts and through diving into the Word, we seek to learn how to engage culture in its terms, but not of it. We believe the gospel speaks to all areas of life and provides the answers we are looking for, so we aim to equip saints with applying the gospel to our lives, living as saints in society.
All right, fellas, quick question to get us started off this morning. If you had to pack up and move anywhere in the world for 1 year, you're going to move there, you're going to live there with your family, you have to remain there for an entire year, where would you move and why?
I jumped in early thinking about places I've been. I guess it would be interesting to say places I've been and not been. But if I'm going somewhere I've been, it would be Tuscany and Italy, that region.
And why?
I think I enjoy the culture, the food, the wine, the people. We spent a week there one Christmas as a family, and it was glorious. Wow. Yeah.
Okay.
I think place I haven't been that would be the next one would be New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the place. It would be tough if you said you get to choose one of the two.
Yeah.
I might choose New Zealand because I haven't been there, and I could fly fish.
How's the bird hunting though?
There's a lot of hunting. I don't know about bird hunting.
Stags.
Down there.
Yeah. Uh-huh. All right. Brad, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like it's risky to pick somewhere you've never been. You got to be there a whole year. But if we're picking somewhere I've never been, probably Europe somewhere, maybe Greece. But I've never been there and I don't know what it would be like to live there.
Okay.
But if it's somewhere I've been, and this is way more realistic, I would move to Montana for a year.
Why?
And that year would turn into the rest of my life because my wife loves the snow. And we don't get that here in Eugene. My wife and I also love the sun. And sometimes we don't get that here in Eugene. And so the seasons of sun and snow, I think would be really good for our family. Plus fishing, hunting, all the activities that I love to do would be there in, I think, much more abundance than we get them here in Oregon. And it's beautiful to wake up every morning and look at Montana, man. So that'd be my answer.
Okay.
I spend a lot of time in Montana. I do some fill-in work there. So I go once a month to Missoula right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick a part, it'd be either the Kalispell Whitefish area or the Bozeman Livingston area. But
yeah.
What about you?
I feel like mine are going to be pretty lame in the sense that
Winston, Oregon.
Initially, I would say Alaska.
Ooh.
The problem is the amount of sunshine that they don't get. And so I don't think my wife would do well there for a year, nor do I think I would do well. So I would honestly probably choose Northern Idaho or Montana, and places I've never been or places I've been. I've never really been to Northern Idaho, but I would go there. Or I'm not willing to give up a year of living in a location that doesn't have elk. I'm not willing to give up a year of non-elk hunting. So it's going to have to be a location that has sunshine, that's conservative, that has good elk hunting, stuff like that. So
cool.
Yeah. So Northern Idaho or Bozeman, Montana.
All right.
Yeah. But out in the sticks a little bit too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. We're diving in this morning and we're tackling a difficult subject. And on this season of Saints in Society, we have brought in experts in their various field. Today, we have Dr. Balderston with us, and we're going to dive in to the topic of abortion. And so, Keith, we want to give a little bit of an introduction to you and specifically why you are an expert in this field. One of the biggest things that comes up as we talk about abortion is this. The culture asks these two questions. Are you a woman And are you a doctor? And so this morning, we at least got 50% with us. So we have a doctor who specializes in this field. But before we dive into that, let's tell our guests a little bit about Keith and specifically who we have sitting with us this morning. So Keith's been married to Stephanie for 33 years now. He has 3 kids. We're thankful that a couple of his kids both attend Gospel Community Church as well. Keith, you love to fly fish. You love to bird hunt. You have 4 dogs, 2 cats, and 14 chickens. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's safe to say this, from getting to know you now through this past season, is you are a man who likes to dive in deep to hobbies and has quite a few hobbies running all at the same time, because you're also beekeeping now too, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and you didn't even throw that one in here.
That's right.
You also like reloading, you like long range shooting. And so, yeah, that's just a little bit about some of the hobbies and interests you have. Brad, I'll let you kind of unpack what Keith's education is.
Yeah, it's a long list here. So if I get something wrong, you can correct me. You did your bachelor's at the University of Oregon from 84 to 88, played basketball all 4 years. And it says here that you are number 3 all time in field goal percentage.
Yes, still I am.
Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
Just means I didn't shoot enough.
Yeah. But when you did, it went in. That's awesome. And then you did medical school at OHSU in Portland. That's also where you did your OBGYN residency from 92 to 96. And then from 96 to 98, you were at UC Irvine for your fellowship in maternal-fetal medicine. You were on faculty at OHSU from 1998 to 2002. And then since then, you've been working at the Center for Genetics and Maternal-Fetal Medicine, and that's here in Eugene, correct?
Yes.
At Women's Care?
Yes.
From 2002 till now, so 20 years.
Yes.
20 years in the same
year anniversary
same
back
field.
in Eugene.
Wow, that is awesome. So lots of school, lots of experience, lots of education in the world of pregnancy and delivery and birth and what goes on and fetal development and all that kind of stuff. So
Can you, with that, just explain and unpack a little bit about your job, what it is that you do on a day-to-day for our listeners and even for us to just have a better understanding of that? Because it's a pretty big title.
Yes.
To try to get our minds wrapped around. So
I often describe it as I'm a high-risk pregnancy doctor. I think that kind of helps people kind of understand, okay, what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So we changed our name of our society. We used to be called perinatologists. So you hear about neonatologists. So we were called perinatologists. And then they officially changed our name. I don't remember when, late 90s or so, to maternal-fetal medicine. And really, that's what we do. We're taking care of both the medical aspects of moms, mothers, as well as the fetus. So kind of have 2 sides. We do a lot of ultrasound. And with that is kind of anatomy, dealing with abnormal anatomy, a lot of counseling on pregnancy situations. We do a lot of management of diabetes, hypertension, renal disease. Then I have kind of the inpatient side where we're dealing with moms that are from other communities to get sent here for delivery because they're too early to deliver at their outside community. So we have a pretty big referral base down to Roseburg over the coast, Corvallis, Albany, up to probably Newport. I go to Bend and do a lot of outreach there. And so those moms that are getting sent in with, kind of a lot of the typical things, they go into labor earlier, they break the bag of water early, preeclampsia is one. But because of that, I'm dealing with a lot of patients early in pregnancies and kind of viability thresholds. And I'm sure that we'll dive into that, as I think that's an important part of this conversation. So kind of day to day, lots of ultrasound, and then kind of coordination of care with the regular OBGYNs that are kind of managing the day-to-day of the pregnancy, but we're giving advice on how to take care of things.
Awesome.
Wow, that's cool.
That's super helpful.
Yep.
We're going to dive in. We have some questions that we're going to throw at you and just kind of see where this goes.
Good.
Yeah. I'm going to start off with a really big question that's a loaded question. Is there ever a time for someone who professes Christ, who is a Christian, that abortion is okay?
Great question. Mm-hmm. A good way to start. I think we have a few challenges that we have to understand when we're talking about these issues. So first of all, the definition of abortion. I think I can't really answer that question until I answer that question. And I'm not going to profess that I have the absolute definition. So when we talk about a woman who's pregnant, we talk about something called gravity and parity. So gravity is how many times you've been pregnant, and then parity is what has happened during those pregnancies. So every time you get pregnant, you get one notch in the gravity side. And then when you deliver, we divide that, or when the pregnancy ends, if you will, into 4 categories. So term is anything from 37 weeks on when you deliver. Preterm is 20 weeks until 37 weeks. And then the third number is abortions. So any pregnancy that ends under 20 weeks from our OBGYN definitions, doesn't matter how, it's just a pregnancy that ended under 20 weeks would be an abortion, and then we end it with living children. So anytime someone's presenting a patient to me, they'll say, I have a 35-year-old gravid of 5. She's on her 5th pregnancy. She's a para 2, 0, 1, 2. So she had 2 term deliveries, no preterm. She had an abortion, whether that was a miscarriage, and then has 2 living children. So when we use the term abortion, that is kind of one definition. If you look up in the dictionary, and full disclosure, I didn't do my homework because I was a little off on our scheduling dates. And so I was going to, have a little more homework done ahead of time, which is good and bad. Sometimes it's nice to just talk without kind of having these planned responses and really kind of talk from the heart. But some definitions would say the, medical abortion, the ending of a pregnancy. And I think when and how is a big part of that. So the definition of termination pregnancy is just you're not pregnant anymore as well. So I think these terms get clouded, and they get clouded on purpose to confuse people and then confuse issues. So if you deliver at whatever 33 weeks and I deliver you because you have preeclampsia and you're getting ill and we need to deliver the baby, by definition, we terminated the pregnancy at that point. It's not an abortion. So that's why these questions are a little complicated. So I think we have to be cautious about the words we use. And it's on purpose, I think, that they keep them clouded, especially when you're talking to the really group that's pro-abortion. And I think we'll dive into that. So answering your question, is abortion ever okay? Mm-hmm. The answer is yes. I think abortion is okay in certain circumstances, and where that comes into play in my role is really mother's health. And so there are times when we absolutely need to end a pregnancy for the mother's health. And that is an important thing to drill down into. And I don't know if we want to take that as another question later to drill into it, but there's very, very few times I've had to recommend termination of pregnancy or an abortion, medically ending a pregnancy, because a mom's life is in jeopardy before viability. It does happen. It's not a lot of times in my career. And those are obviously very challenging times. There's a lot of times when we end pregnancy past viability that I think the very radical abortion activists now are really trying to confuse people's understanding and saying, you can't do an abortion to save a mother's life. So we do that all the time. I'm delivering patients very early because they need to be delivered for their safety.
Wait, can I ask a clarifying question? Yeah. When you say viability, just for clarification, right, you mean that at that point the baby can be delivered and be viable on its own outside of the womb?
Yes. Also a very important question. I listened to a quick interview. Stacey Abrams, who's running for the governor in Georgia, she was asked the question specifically trying to get her to commit on, is there a time when you should not have an abortion? Is there a line to draw in the sand? And basically, they run from that question by saying, A, we don't know what viability is, or that's really between the mother and the doctor. And that's I think, frankly untrue. So we have very strict definitions of viability, in my opinion. And that also goes back into Roe v. Wade. I didn't prepare on that. It's something we may want to talk about later, but that was that's a buzzword, but it is important. So on a day-to-day basis, I talk to patients about viability, and that's okay. If we deliver the baby, what's the chance of it being able to survive out of the womb? And it's interesting because that level throughout my 30 years, and I just had my 30-year medical school reunion. Wasn't attending, but that was this past weekend. But in that 30 years, I would say we started around 25 weeks, and now there's a lot of places resuscitating infants at 22 weeks. So a full-term pregnancy is considered 40 weeks, okay? So 22 weeks, that is considered viability in many institutions. So here, I would say most people are using probably 23 weeks, but that number keeps getting lower and lower. So that is, when I use the term viability, that is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Thank you. Yeah.
And also to clarify, so what I'm hearing when we talk about the word abortion is first we need to define what abortion is and what it means, and maybe even starting from obviously a medical understanding of that, because it sounds like you're saying, like, it seems like there's a philosophical understanding of that, then there's a medical understanding of that. If I heard you right, an abortion is any death of a baby before 20 weeks. So is that right? So if a baby is miscarried, would that be called or considered an abortion? Yes.
When we're talking in kind of the historical terms that we use in obstetrics and gynecology, ending of a pregnancy anytime under 20 weeks is considered abortion. Now, that term is, I think, really now been used to define really a medical abortion, that we are medically intervening and ending a pregnancy. And I think that's really what the term abortion has morphed into when people talk about abortion.
Okay. Where do you think the best place, Keith, to start with this conversation is? Like what does a Christian need to know? What does a Christian need to understand about abortion? What does a Christian need to understand? I'm going to throw a ton of questions at you, so you pick the one you like the best. What does a Christian need to understand about the controversy around pro-life and pro-choice? Where is media and where is our society leading people with very misconstrued, or, like you said, it sounds like the definitions are ambiguous on purpose. And so what do Christians need to understand about this topic? What do we need to train them in, teach them in, equip them in? Where do you think the best place is to go for this conversation?
Sure. I think part of equipping the saints, and kind of the purpose of our podcast, your guys' podcast, equipping the saints, would be, looking scripturally at life. And I think, looking at the Psalms, when it talks about you're fearfully and wonderfully made in your mother's womb. So I think God has given us pretty good definition that something was special in your mother's womb. Mm-hmm. And I think as a Christian, that is very important. And we have to understand that is where God feels life is important. Okay. I think one of the challenges in medicine, and specifically as a maternal-fetal medicine doctor, is I'm dealing with abnormalities and babies with lethal abnormalities and non-lethal abnormalities. And that's a tough road to navigate with families. So as a physician, I'm also held under a standard of care of information that's given to patients and things like that. So it becomes, it's a little bit of a tough order as a high-risk pregnancy doctor and as a Christian. And how does that translate into talking about abortion and ending pregnancy? Yep. So I'm getting off topic a little bit here, but I think what we have to also separate a little bit is what is right for me as a Christian and what my belief system is on abortion for, my wife, my family, versus if you're not a Christian and what you get to choose to do. And so that's always a little bit tricky. So I think from a moral standpoint, abortion would be sin if my wife and I, she got pregnant and we decided we didn't want the pregnancy and had abortion. I really feel that is outside of God's will, and that is wrong no matter what the circumstances. And when we say that, I'm not talking about trying to save the life of my wife, but now can I translate that to other people? And that's where it's tough.
Yeah. So with that, I would agree with you. I think abortion is a sinful act. I think it's an immoral act. So the question becomes then, if it's a sinful, immoral act, but we can do it, or it's okay to terminate a baby for this mother's safety, what is the percentage of that? I mean, to where I was looking at some percentages this morning, and it seems like still about 90% of abortions are from women in their 20s that are unmarried out of a convenience factor. It seems like pro-choice people like to always bring up the argument of rape and incest, but it seems like that percentage is still so drastically low. And what you're talking about, it seems like the safety of the mother is also something that you've only had to do like a small percentage of time. So it seems like the argument is then it seems like it's still being done just out of a sheer convenience factor.
Absolutely. There was a kind of a famous quote by Bill Clinton, not that I'm a Bill Clinton fan, but he said, and I thought it was interesting, abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Kind of an interesting pro-abortion statement. Unfortunately, I think that's completely gone. And I'm not saying that's the correct statement, but it's an interesting statement that was brought up in the past. The vast majority of abortions are not done because of incest, rape, or the health of the mother. And I think incest rape might be 0.5% to 1%. It's incredibly low. Mm-hmm. And the times I've needed to end pregnancies because of safety of the mother over my career, maybe 20 pre-viability. Maybe it's a few more than that, but it's an incredibly low number. That is not a situation that happens very often. One of the places where we get confused, and this is, I'm going to go into a little graphic talk, because I think people are this is incredibly important to kind of our conversation, and to really, I think, Christians being equipped to deal with this issue, is that to end a pregnancy, the baby has to come out of the mother. Okay. That sounds a little basic, but that has to happen at some point. Okay. So the classic abortion is a surgical procedure where if you're early enough, it's a little suction catheter. And if you're farther along, then you're actually dilating the cervix and removing the fetus in parts. Okay. And so there's these special instruments that, to remove the fetus. That type of procedure only happens till about 24 weeks. Okay. So it's kind of interesting. In the past, that was kind of the limit of viability, was 24 weeks for years and years. And that's kind of where this surgical abortion was. So after that point of time, if you're going to end the pregnancy, it still needs to come out. We don't have we're not Star Trek where we can beam the baby out of you. Yeah. So at that point, you have to deliver the baby. Okay. So really you have vaginal delivery or a C-section. And so where a lot of people are going down this road of abortion at any time up until, say your due date, is the patient still has to deliver the baby. Now you're just deciding if you're going to deliver the baby alive or killing the baby and then delivering her. It's still the same delivery process. So I'm not doing anything different to save the life of the mother in that situation. She's going to deliver no matter what. So to say we're putting mothers' lives at risk, we're not going to terminate pregnancies with the mother's life at risk, they're really twisting things a lot. So under viability, it's very rare. It does happen. And in the case of an ectopic pregnancy, or I had one mom in particular that had a very abnormal heart valve and had twins, and she was basically dying unless we ended the pregnancy. So she was about 15 weeks. So we had to do a surgical procedure in the cardiac surgery room while then she then had a new valve replaced. So in essence, she basically was dying. We ended the pregnancy and she got a heart valve at the same time. And so she lived. That's a pretty rare situation. So when we then talk about, I would say classically, people are talking about abortion as a surgical procedure that is done. That ends at 24 weeks because it's too dangerous and too hard to do. So really, this after that point, you're just making a decision. I don't want the baby to be born alive or dead. And that is where I'm really upset. And we really need to help equip the saints to understand what we're talking about. And that gets blurred a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
That's interesting. Either way, you're saying once 24 weeks hits, either way, the mom is delivering the baby. And so it's a matter of she's either delivering the baby alive or, it's post-viability, according to what we've talked about already. So any abortion post 24 weeks is still a birth, still a delivery. It's just a decision to end the life of the child in the womb before that delivery takes place.
Yes.
Do you think some of the language we use is a means to make people feel better? Because even throughout like our conversation, like we talk about termination of pregnancy, we talk about fetus and whatnot. And you use both, like termination or killing the baby. So do you feel like abortion or termination is just a way to basically soften the blow for what's really taking place of killing a baby? Or do you feel like using the word fetus, which would describe an infant or a baby, is another way to soften the blow? So when we say something like we have to terminate the fetus's life, is all that just a nice softened way to just essentially say someone's going in to have an abortion and they're going to kill the life of their baby?
I completely agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's a little subconscious as well. It's tough to say those words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's really hard as soon as you replace it for baby or human or human life. So I have a lot of questions for you, Keith. So one of the arguments that people used to make, which is an outdated argument now, but some people are still using it, is it's just a clump of cells. It's just a fetus. It doesn't really matter at that point whether you kill the baby or not. How would someone from the medical field respond to something like that? Hey, yes, I'm going to go abort my baby, but it doesn't really matter. It's just a clump of cells and it's just a fetus.
It's an interesting term that's thrown out there.
Yeah.
It's a clump of cells, not very long. You have a fetal pole really within 4 weeks after intercourse and conception occurs. And so if you wanted to use that argument, you have a clump of cells for not very long. After that, at 6 weeks, we're seeing the heartbeat on ultrasound. We're seeing the fetal pole. Even at 11, 12 weeks, I'm seeing the structures in the brain that are making spinal fluid. The stomach is present. The baby is swallowing. At that point, you see limb bud. So if you want to use that argument, then your window is very small. That, a blastocyst is by definition a group of cells, but you're not a blastocyst very long. Once you implant into the uterus, you make the placenta quickly, you make the fetal pole, you have separation, whatever you want to use as your definition. So if you want to use that and say, okay, you're a clump of cells until I'll give you 2 or 3 weeks, but not much longer than that. So.
And most women don't even find out they're pregnant until 5 or 6, maybe 7 weeks, right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah. You're getting, conception is happening 2 weeks before your period. So, it's you have a week or two of maybe a clump of cells. But.
Yeah. Yeah. And the argument there is that, well, it's a clump of cells, but a clump of cells is one stage of development for a human and the process of a human being developed. And so it's still a human.
Absolutely.
And the process of being developed. Even when babies are born, they're not born fully developed. Even when a teenager is a teenager, they are still at that age, not fully developed. And so it's just one stage in the process of human development is how I see that. I don't know if you would agree with that.
I completely agree. Yeah. I just like to also show the ignorance of the argument.
Yeah.
Would you then, you talked about different methods of abortion at different stages in the pregnancy, and now we're talking about very, very early on. Well, a question that sometimes comes up is Plan B contraceptive. I guess that's not a contraceptive. That's the argument, right? Is Plan B still abortion taken after the expected conception? How would you respond to that? Morally, as Christians, is Plan B an okay alternative?
That's good question. I'm not sure what the exact mechanism of action is. It's either making the uterus less likely to accept the embryo as it comes into the uterus and therefore implanting. So you're making it less likely for that embryo to implant. So when you have an egg and a sperm come together, that's conception, but that happens in the tube. You do have an embryo, but it still has to implant and then start to stick and grow. And so like with an IVF pregnancy, and we put embryos in the uterus, many of those, maybe 20% of the time, they actually stick into the uterus and then start to grow. So a lot of times that doesn't happen, and many, many times, probably the majority of the time, you don't the pregnancy implant. So Plan B, I think, is primarily used to make an in-hospital environment, so it lowers that 20% chance of implantation down. It's a bit of semantics. Is that an abortion or not? I don't know the true answer to that. I think that's primarily how it works. Now, if you have an implanted pregnancy and use hormones that block progesterone, that's RU46, I think definitely that is an abortion.
Okay. Oh.
Okay.
This week's local business spotlight is a favorite around the GCC offices, and it's Great Harvest Bakery. We love their cinnamon rolls, and we get them often for staff meetings because of how delicious they are. The Eugene Great Harvest Bakery on Willamette Street in South Eugene started back in 1988 with Cloyd and Kathy Robson. Kathy sold the business to Jess and Gordo in 2014 when they moved here to Eugene from Utah. Gordo had worked in a bakery while he was going to college, and he had loved the experience. So when he got a quote unquote real job in his field of study, he realized that he would much rather be in a bakery. Gordo thinks it's so much more fun than a real job to be in a bakery. And so he and Jess quit their jobs and bought the bakery. They also loved this area and thought they would be happy to raise a family here. And 8 years later, they now have 4 kids and love being part of the Eugene community. It brings them great joy, baking with whole grains and providing people and families with products that are made with passion. This fall, Great Harvest will be moving the bakery across the street to 2605 Willamette Street, which is the old Scopel Dry Cleaners building. There will be an outdoor patio, espresso, and a larger bakery and cafe menu. The motto of Great Harvest is to be loose and have fun, run fast to help customers, bake phenomenal bread, create a strong and exciting bakery, and give generously to others. And I can say from personal experience, I've experienced all those things when I go into Great Harvest. This motto is not just about the bakery, but it exemplifies how Jess and Gordo want to live their lives. Great Harvest loves thinking abundantly and giving generously to others. They offer free samples, slices of bread and different things when people come into the store. They love sharing their products with people and even sometimes giving more than someone might expect. Gordo and Jess truly believe that bakeries bring people together, but it's not always about the bread that you break, it's who you break it with that matters. Great Harvest Bakery is unique since they mill their own whole grains on site in their own mill. They guarantee that their bread is going to be the freshest you will get because often the wheat flour used was milled just 24 hours before your purchase. They specialize in whole grains, so they have many 100% whole grain breads. We encourage you to go visit Great Harvest, soon to be in their new location. And when you go see Gordo and Jess, be sure and let them know that you heard about them on Saints and Society.
Another question I have for you is, we oftentimes hear my body, my choice, that these are women's rights and every woman has the right over the life of the baby. Where do you see this playing out in the future? Because I've even heard talks now because the argument is that there's no reason why the mother should be held responsible to keep the child alive that's within her. It's her choice to kill the baby if she wants to make the decision to do that. It's her body, her choice. But we would also agree and understand that when the baby comes out, that baby for a long time is dependent upon its mother. And so where do you see this train of thought, this logic going in the future? Do you think that where we're headed leads to essentially mothers that have 1 and 2 year olds saying, yeah, I mean, it's okay to kill your kids because they're dependent upon you. There's no reason why you have to be tied down. I mean, go chase your dreams, go live your life, go, do whatever you're doing. This baby's basically sucking the life out of your life and whatnot. And so I'm curious, where do you see this playing out? Like, where do you see these decisions and this logic moving toward?
Excellent question. I think that's one of the biggest concerns with slogans like that is, where is the line drawn? And I think you have to have some lines drawn in the sand. Therefore, that argument, if you are going to draw a line in the sand, then there is no my body, my choice. It's kind of I've thought a lot about this. So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
So if it's my body, my choice, and then we limit, like many countries in the world, United States is very different. I would say most countries in the world, maybe 5 of them have, as liberal of abortion policies as we do, but most countries don't. Okay. So they might, let's say you arbitrarily say, we're going to draw the line in the sand at 20 weeks and abortion can be done until then. And then it can't be after that. So you have my body, my choice for 20 weeks, but then after that, you in essence don't. So you're either an all in my body, my choice. And then it becomes, I think, until the day the baby's born, if that's what you believe, then that is the ultimate end to that. Now, because of dependency, you're bringing up the point, the baby's dependent on the mother, but I don't think that translates past delivery, because the hospital can take that baby and then care for it, and then we could have somebody adopt it, those kind of things. But I do think it's a really important question, because if you really say my body, my choice, then you are in essence saying I can terminate that child at that baby, that fetus, that child, anytime until it actually is delivered from me. So that's really the end phase. And it's interesting, that was kind of hidden for a long time, but now this is really getting pushed hard, and it's unbelievable to me. But at the same time, I think it's an important thing to really look at, is if you limit when you can do abortion, then you're in essence saying my body, my choice works for a little bit of time. And so people have to decide.
You get 20 weeks of my body, my choice. But now what's happening and what they're wanting to happen is that we can just keep pushing that date further and further to where the baby's full term, and the only thing that separates you from doing time in prison is a canal, right?
Exactly.
So once the baby comes out and you kill your baby in the hospital, you're going to prison. But as long as you make sure that you do that while it's tucked inside of the womb, it's okay.
And that's such an important point, because this is what is really being pushed for. And where they really are pushing this is now they bring in the life of the mother. And that's where conveniently they want to use this. But the truth of the matter is, I'm delivering patients. That's all I do is deliver babies at 26 weeks, 30 weeks, 32 weeks, because they need to be delivered because of maternal or fetal health. So I don't need to kill that baby first and then deliver it. It's got to come out. And so that's where that argument is completely broken down. The baby still has to come out.
Do you want it to come out dead or alive?
Exactly.
Is the question. Dang.
So I think at least all of us around this table would agree, and I think we would also agree that every Christian should agree that abortion is sinful, morally wrong, while there are exception cases, medically speaking, where things get gray. The vast majority of abortions that take place in our country are for convenience, and we would say that the intentional termination of a pregnancy that results in the death of a child is sinful and morally wrong. Now, we live in, as saints, as Christians who hold that conviction, we live in a society that is not only accepting abortion in this way, but celebrating and pushing for it with heightened emotions. And yeah, it is the issue of the day. Well, one of them. There's a few of them, but it's one of the issues of the day. So how do we as saints living in society, how do we as Christians engage with the world around us on a topic like this, on an issue like this? On our ballots, as far as legislation goes, with our the way we engage with neighbors in conversations, our apologetics, our arguments, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we can just talk about share some thoughts on how do we think we should engage in our society right now with this issue so heightened as it is. So Keith, I don't know if you want to jump in there and if you have thoughts about any of that.
Yeah, as I see, small news clips, and you have clashes when there's a pro-life march, and you see the pro-choice group come out, and really the vitriol and anger that's being put out towards the pro-life community is really interesting to see. And it talks about, I don't want to say it's in Ezekiel, but don't quote me on that one, how things will be turned around where good is bad and bad is considered good. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that play out. It's very interesting. I wish I could remember the little footage I watched the other day. The slogan that was being said was something like, what the gist was, and I can't remember what the slogan was, but the gist was, by being pro-life, you're killing women. And so you're really not pro-life because you're putting women's lives at risk. That's really where you can't push. I mean, it's interesting that abortion is killing a baby, okay? And so it's kind of funny that your argument to the people that are against that is that, well, you're voting to kill mothers, and so you're wrong. I mean, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. If they're trying to say that killing somebody is wrong, well, your whole point of what you're supporting is killing something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I think what's important as we engage with others is really, I think, trying to have an argument on where is this line drawn in the sand. And it's hard for me because I don't believe abortion is moral. And on the other hand, the way our society is and how we set up laws is we allow people to do things, whether that's, drink alcohol or there's many things that we allow in society, but yet we have limits on that. If you drink alcohol and you drive, then that now is illegal. And so you've crossed this line. And so it's really hard from putting these two things together in my mind on what I do on a daily basis, and saying, okay, I feel abortion's okay up to 15 weeks or 20 weeks, or draw a line in the sand of viability or wherever, because I think all abortion is wrong. At the same time, I think where we are with our society, where we allow the government to draw these lines, and I feel we probably need a line somewhere. And that's where this conversation is really tough. And it's hard. How do we talk to our other Christians about dealing with this in politics? Yeah. Do we push for something that no abortion can ever happen? Mm-hmm. Or do we say we need sensible abortion laws?
Yeah.
And I feel like if I say I want a sensible abortion law, okay, I'm condoning abortion. And that's where I struggle. I'll be honest, I really struggle with that. So is that wrong as a Christian to say that? I don't know.
Yeah. Let me take a stab at it, Brad. And
stab away.
And it might be a long-winded stab, but let me start stabbing. Maybe you can patch up some of the holes I stabbed. So what I would say is that first and foremost, our job as Christians is to preach and proclaim the gospel, because the gospel alone is the only means to save and transform hearts and lives, but also to renew minds. And so someone can be pro-life and on a path straight for hell. Someone they can have the cleanest vocabulary. They can be pro-life. They can be whatever. They can believe in traditional forms of marriage between man and woman, but they could still not know Jesus Christ and be on a path to hell. So our aim and goal is not ultimately to try to convert people from pro-choice to pro-life, but it's to convert people to Christ, because only in Christ will someone have a renewed heart and a renewed mind. And so I think that's the place to start. I think if we're going to do something, what we can do, because this is such a passionate topic, and what Christians can do, and I think to winsomely engage our society right now, is to recognize that people aren't living consistent with a postmodern worldview. In other words, postmodernism says that there is no right and wrong, there is no morality, there is no objective standards. Our world, especially Lane County, doesn't believe that. Look around. We are avid on racism. We are avid on my body, my choice. Like, we are avid on so many things and passionate about it that no one's arguing that anymore. So I think we first need to just even celebrate that people are passionate about things that they feel are right and wrong. They are misguided. I don't believe that you can be a Christian and be pro-choice. If you are, it's be for a short season where you're confused. And I believe that through the work of the Spirit that you will grow in that area. But I think what we can start to do is engage people and even ask them, like, why are you so passionate about this? And say, like, it seems like you are passionate about fighting for women's rights, and it seems like you are passionate about justice. Where do you think that comes from? What we're leading them to is the reason they have a passionate fight for justice is because they're created in the image of God, who is a just God. They just have a misplaced understanding of justice. And you can understand the line of logic. If you go back to the first century and even prior to that, the paterfamilias ran the household. And so the men were the head of the household. And so what would actually happen back then in the Roman times is when the babies were born, the midwives would be in the room. And if the head of the household, the man, the paterfamilia, picked up the baby was welcomed in the household. If he looked at the baby and did not pick it up, the midwife would then take the baby and discard the baby. They would kill the baby. They would get rid of it. And so this has been, like, the woman didn't have a say in the matter. This has been going on for a while. I think a lot of this and, patriarchy and all this stuff has led women to say, like, now we're planting our feet in the ground and now we're going to fight. I believe strongly, with a strong conviction, it is a misplaced fight for human rights, because now what you are doing is saying that you're fighting for women's rights, but you're not fighting for the right of the woman that's inside of the womb. So I say all that to say, I think the direction that I would go is I would point people toward why they're so passionate, why they have so much, passion and fight in and around this area, is because they're created in the image of God. That's a good thing. I just think it's a misplaced view on justice and what justice is. So I don't know if you have any thoughts to that.
Yeah, I think we've said before that society is made up of individuals, of people. And so while I think marches and picketing and Facebook posts have maybe their place somewhere, I think the most effective way that we're going to engage with people on a topic like this is to build relationships with people, with non-Christians, where we get to share our convictions and the good news of what Jesus has done and how that is transforming us. And so I think I struggle to get behind big political shows of truth when there's a lack of, like, the individual relationships with the people that we might be at odds with. And so I just think we need to engage in loving relationships where we share our convictions. I do think we live in a really interesting time in history and in an interesting part of the world where we have more of a say, theoretically, in laws and legislation and government and politics than most people around the world and most people for all of history. And so, you have Romans 13, where rulers have been put in place to govern the land, to punish evil, to reward good, to bring about human flourishing in some way. They're going to do it imperfectly. But nevertheless, that is the government's responsibility. For most of time, people like us, okay, great, let's hope they do it. But now, in the democracy republic, like the kind of government we operate in as Christians in this kind of society, we do have some say in what the government, where those lines are drawn, and what is limited, and what is right and wrong, and what is punished, and what is rewarded, and that kind of thing. And so I do think there's a place to engage on that level, but I don't think that engagement should come at the expense of or in place of an individual one-on-one engagement with people in our life.
I also think in a passionate fight for women's rights, what you're doing is excusing men and removing men from having to take ownership and responsibility for choices they make. So in this whole act to fight for my body, my choice, and then be pro-choice and abort babies, you are also continuing to let men off the hook in our society from actually growing up and ever acting like men that get a job, that work, that provide for their families. And so I think you're just providing a freebie in and out for men to just go around having sex with women, getting what they want, getting all their physical needs met, and then not having to do anything to grow up. And I just don't think that that's actually going to produce a love and a value for women in our society with men. I just think you're continuing to let men be boys. So, yeah. I don't know if you have any thoughts on any of that, Keith.
I guess getting back to, I think what you said was so true, is that without Christ as our Savior, we don't necessarily know what direction we're headed and what's right.
That's good.
And it's very easy to take some of these political ideologies or visions and become incredibly passionate about them. And you see that with a lot of issues in our society right now, whether that's, global warming or so many topics, and people are becoming so passionate. So you're right. There really is passion for what you feel is right or wrong. And that's where I think Satan uses this, because it's, these people are very passionate about protecting this right to end a pregnancy because they feel that is so morally correct. And it's interesting how Satan flips the script here. And I think really without Christ as the center, Satan uses it to confuse. And when we're passionate about something, it gives us some self-worth. And then I'm passionate about this and I'm fighting for it and I'm doing good. And I think it's really interesting how that is being used, I think, by Satan to really confuse the world right now. And they're taking stances and becoming, that's now your religion, which is really interesting. And that becomes where it's really tough for us, because we're losing dialogue. We're losing the ability to communicate, because now my religion is my body, my choice. Therefore, if you have a different opinion, you're evil, and we cannot discuss this. And that's where we're losing the battle a little bit right now. And I agree. I don't think these public forums of conflict really change anybody's idea. I think it's really having influence on those around us every day. And if we get the opportunity to talk with someone that's really bringing this up. And for me, the my body, my choice argument really becomes, let's play this out. And then you tell me what you're comfortable with. So if you
explain that more,
my body, my choice, then that means until the day the baby comes out of your body. And let's talk about, do you really believe that?
That's good.
Something we haven't gotten to and we don't have time to, but it's really easy to talk about abortion as pro-life and pro-choice and probably miss the fact that, how many millions of women have had an abortion, and the the effects that has, I think, mentally and psychologically and emotionally. And so I think as saints living in a society where this is a heightened topic right now, a compassion and care for the women who have been through something like this and what that does. I think that's a group that can often maybe get overlooked because of the volleys back and forth about truth and logic and conviction, and we can miss. There's probably many women in churches who, for a variety of reasons, have had an abortion. And if we shout from the pulpit about how wrong and sinful abortion is, I think we've probably missed an opportunity to shepherd and care for some women. And so I don't want to overlook that aspect of this conversation as well. I think as Christians, we can approach this with a view for those women in a way that's compassionate and in tune with the effects that a procedure like that can have on someone.
And so how do we speak to, how do we approach, how do we gospel women who have had an abortion? Yeah.
That's a very important point, and I do feel we do need to support those women that have made that choice at some point along their life and now regret it. And there are a lot. To say that everyone will ultimately regret their choice, I think, is a little ignorant. Sure. But I think there are a lot, especially those who then come to faith later or were at a point where they made a bad choice and then have a lot of guilt. And I think that's with a lot of sin. But it's a tough one, and people do need support for it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Brad, what I would say is that God has commanded not to murder. Clear command. I would say abortion's murder. I would also say Jesus defines for us what murder is, and it's hatred toward another one. So in a very real sense, no one is off the hook for murder. Yeah. And that's not to minimize abortion or anything like that. It's to say that all Christians all across the world, all people at some point in their lives are guilty of murder for hatred towards other people. The reality that we live with and that we would want women to hear and live with is that Jesus is the only human that never committed an act of murder, both physically or with his thought life. And Jesus died on the cross for every way that we have committed acts of murder. And I have multiple family members who have had abortions, and they would tell you there's not a day that goes by that they don't think about that decision or action. The only hope they have is that the blood of Christ is sufficient to cover that, and that God now, through and in Christ, doesn't look at them and see them as a murderer. God looks at them and sees them as completely holy and blameless in the life that they've lived, because the life they've lived is hidden in the life that Christ lived for them. And so I believe that because of that there's a tremendous amount of freedom, that we no longer have to live with shame or guilt because Christ took that on. And so that's what I would say. And to try to minister those truths to women, that you're not defined by all of your decision and choices. You're defined by what Christ has done for you.
Yeah, I think that's good. Cool. Well, thanks, Keith, so much for being here with us. Thank you for sharing all those thoughts. And I think this was a super helpful conversation. We hope it was helpful for listeners as well. If you have any questions about the things we've talked about, we kind of opened a can of worms that we didn't have the time to fully dig into. And so there's probably a lot of unanswered questions you might have. If that's the case, please email us, reach out to us. We'd love to talk further. Yeah, Keith, appreciate your time. Rick does too, but he had to leave. So thank you for being here, and we'll catch you guys next time on another episode of Saints in Society.